Hey guys, this video is going to give you a little introduction to lesson 11.6, which is learning about the quadratic formula and how to actually use it. So yesterday, we talked about what the quadratic formula was. Now today you're actually going to use it to find solutions to quadratic equations. So your goal is, if I give you an equation like this, you're going to be able to find some solutions for x that make this equation true. And the equations might look a little different as well, but that is going to be your goal. So we already know some ways. We could try to factor it, we could complete the square, we could graph it, but now we're going to learn another way using the quadratic formula. Also, this is actually the way that most people use if they kind of get stuck. This is kind of going to be your go-to method because it works for every single type of problem. So if you can't factor it, or if it's not nice, then I would go to this method. All right, on the top of your sheet, I would like you to try the couple warm-up problems. Pause the video, and then when you are done trying them, please push play. All right, so the first one, it says, can you evaluate the expression if I tell you what A, B, and C are? So it says B squared. Whenever I plug in a value, I always like to put parentheses. So I'm going to put 2 in the parentheses squared, minus 4, and then it says A and C. All right, A is 1, C is -3. Now I need to follow the order of operations to solve this. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 squared. Exponents always come first, which is 4. And then minus, I'm going to times all these. So if I get 4 times 1 is 4, times -3 is -12. So I get 4 minus -12. I'll add the opposite, and I end up with 16 for my solution there. All right, second one, again, B squared. So I'm going to put -4 in parentheses squared, minus 4 times A times C. So times 2 times 5. So if I start with -4 squared, that's positive 16, minus, if I do 4 times 5 is 20, times 2 is 40. And then if I do 16, take away 40, I end up with -24. Okay, if you didn't try the next one, make sure you go ahead and try those real quick, and then push play when you are ready. All right, so the first one, you need to do everything inside that radical symbol first, inside that square root symbol. And you still follow the order of operations. You guys might notice it kind of looks like what we did up here. Okay, so if I do this, I'm going to do -6 squared first, which is 36, and then minus 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 4 is 32, so minus 32. Now I'm going to do 36, take away 32, which is 4, and now the square root of 4 is positive and -2. I'm going to put both of those solutions. And there we go. If we do the next one, so I'm going to do 3 times 5 is 15, plus the square root of 16 is positive and -4 over 2. Okay, so now if I work that out, I've got 15 plus 4, which is 19, divided by 2 is, I knew that, I don't know why I typed that in, 9.5. Okay, then I'm going to do 15 minus 4, which is 11, split in half is 5.5. There are my 2 solutions. All right, and then finally, if I do 4 plus 6, I get 10, divided by 2 is 5. All right, so everything that warm up is actually going to help us when we're using the quadratic formula today. So if you guys look at this, we are going to be solving quadratics using the quadratic formula. And this is what the quadratic formula is. So we learned about this yesterday. I gave it to you, and hopefully you used either the song or the story to help you memorize it. And now we're going to try to solve that, or solve problems using it. But before we can solve them, there's some key things that you need to know. So first thing, if you are solving an equation, a quadratic equation, in order to use it, it has to meet these 4 conditions. The first one is the equation must be equal to 0. That's super important. So you can always get an equation equal to 0. Just move everything to one side, and then you'll just have 0 left on the other side. Also, the equation must be in standard form to use this. That means it must look like this. ax squared plus bx plus c. It has to look something like that. All right, the third thing is when you're solving it, you should use parentheses to avoid any kind of positive or negative mistakes. So just like I did in the warm-up, use parentheses when you plug numbers in. And then you also need to make sure you use the order of operations when you're solving these problems. All right, so let's try our first problem. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the quadratic formula, which you already have on your page. So it is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So again, hopefully you get that memorized. On your first test, we're going to give it to you. So first thing that you need to do when you have an equation is you want to get it written in standard form, and you want to set it equal to 0. So right now it doesn't say equals 0. So I'm just going to add 11 to both sides. So then it's going to have 0 on one side, everything else on the other side. So I have x squared minus 12x plus 11 equals 0. Okay, now it is written in standard form, and now I can solve it using the quadratic equation. So here's how it works. First thing you need to do is you need to find your a value, your b value, and your c value. All right, so my a value is whatever's in front of there. Right now I just see a 1. My b value is in front of the x. That's a negative 12. My c value is that last value there, and that is, oops, I'm going to erase that, an 11. All right, so now that I have those defined, all I'm going to do is take those values and substitute them in my quadratic formula over here. Okay, so if I do that, I am going to write negative, and then I'm going to substitute b. Well, b was a negative 12, so I'm just going to write negative 12 plus or minus the square root. Okay, then it says b squared. Well, I like to put some parentheses. So b squared, negative 12 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 11. Notice how I'm putting parentheses every time I substitute a value in. All over 2 times, it says a, which is 1. So again, just to make sure it's clear, I took whatever b was, wrote it here. Took b, wrote it here, squared it. Minus 4a, c, all over 2a. Now, this looks like a big problem to work out. There's a lot of places you could make mistakes, so you need to make sure you are very careful. So I like to just kind of rewrite it in parts. Well, first of all, that just turns to a 12. Okay, on the bottom, sometimes I just like to take care of that. It's 2. So it's 12 plus or minus. I need to figure out everything inside this square root. Okay, so I know that negative 12 squared is 144 minus 4 times 1 times 11 is 44. Okay, so now I'm left with, inside here, the square root of 100. So now I'm going to work that out. So I end up with 12 plus or minus, well, the square root of 100 right here is 10, either positive or negative 10. That's why we have that plus or minus. And then you divide by 2. So now I have 2 problems. I'm going to do 12 plus 10 divided by 2 and 12 minus 10 divided by 2. So let's do 12 plus 10. Well, 12 plus 10 is 22. Divided by 2 is 11. There's one of my solutions. 12 minus 10 is 2. Divided by 2 is 1. There's my second solution. So my 2 solutions to this equation are x equals 11 or x equals 1. Those are my 2 solutions. Now, I know you know how to test this because we've talked about this a ton this chapter. I could actually just plug it in. I'll plug in a 1 because that one's real easy to check. Okay, so if I checked it, I get 1 squared is 1 minus 12. Does that equal negative 11? It indeed does, so I am correct. All right, so let's go ahead and try another one. Now, you might want to write the equation over on the side. So why don't you test yourself, see if you can write it down without looking back. All right, it is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And when I do it, I sing that Pop Goes the Weasel song every single time in my head. I still have it memorized from when I was in 8th grade. All right, so now I am going to substitute some values in. So first thing I notice, it does not say equals 0. So I need to move that 1 to the other side. So I have 3x squared plus 5x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, now I'm going to define my a, b, and my c. Well, my a value is 3, my b value is 5, my c value is 1. Now all I have to do is take those 3 numbers and plug them in over where I see the a, b, and c. So I'm just kind of rewriting it So don't do this in your head. The first time we're doing this, write this down. All right, so I have negative b, well, b was 5, plus or minus the square root, b squared, so 5 squared, minus 4. Instead of an a, I'll put a 3. Instead of a c, I'll put a 1, all over 2 times a, which is 3. All right, so I'm going to write negative 5 plus or minus. I need to get everything inside there, and then it's over 6. 2 times 3 is 6. All right, 5 squared is 25, minus 4 times 3 times 1 is 12. Okay, 25 take away 12 is 13. Okay, so now I have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 13 over 6. So this is not going to be a nice answer, so we are going to round to the nearest tenth because that's what it says in the directions. So I'm going to do the square root of 13. I end up with 3.6. So I have negative 5 plus or minus 3.6 over 6. So this gives me two different answers. Just to make it explicit, I'm going to write it out twice so you know. You're going to do negative 5 plus 3.6 divided by 6, and then negative 5 minus 3.6 divided by 6. So go ahead, why don't you get those two answers? I'm going to do it too. All right, when I work the top one out, I got negative 0.7. Okay, when I do the bottom one, I get negative 1.4, as long as I didn't make a mistake. All right, so my two solutions are, I'm going to put the approximate symbol because I had to round, negative 0.7, or x is approximately negative 1.4. Those are my two solutions. Now, if you were going to check these ones, it would not exactly work out to be negative 1 because we rounded, but these are the correct solutions. They're approximate. They're not a real nice number, so that's why we're just rounding. All right, I want you to go ahead and try problem number 3 without my help. So go through it, see what you get, and then we'll see what you notice. So pause the video and please try this one. I'll take a couple minutes to try it. All right, so hopefully first thing you did was get this to equal 0. So rewrote it as 4x squared plus 8x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, now you might be thinking, oh, I should divide a 4 out. That would be if you want to factor it. So you could try factoring it right away. That would definitely be an option. Or you might notice like, oh, these look like nice perfect squares. Again, you could try that, but we're going to use the quadratic formula here. Or you could try to complete the square. You could do a lot of things, but we are going to actually just use the quadratic formula. So my a value is 4, my b value is 8, and my c value is 4. Got some 4s and some 8s. So my formula is negative b, so I'll write negative 8 plus or minus the square root, b squared, 8 squared, minus 4 times a times c, lots of 4s, all over 2 times a. All right, so now, again, you should have already worked this out. I get negative 8 plus or minus, I'll put 8 on the bottom. Okay, inside here, 8 squared is 64 minus 4 times 4 times 4 is also 64, all over 8. Okay, now if I work that out, 64 minus 64 is 0. Square root of 0 is 0. So I get negative 8 plus or minus 0 over 8. So my two problems, again, just going to split it up until you get really good at this. I'm going to do negative 8 plus 0 divided by 8 and negative 8 minus 0 divided by 8. So negative 8 plus 0 is negative 8 divided by 8 is negative 1. There's one solution. Negative 8 minus 0, negative 8 divided by 8 is also negative 1. So I got the same number twice. That's called a double root. So that just means there's only one solution, and it is x equals negative 1. So I want you to think about that. If this was a parabola we were graphing, if it only has one solution, what's it going to look like? Well, hopefully you realize it's going to be a parabola that only has one x-intercept, just crosses once. So that means if I tried to factor that, I might get a perfect square. It might be like 2x and 2x. Plus 2 plus 2. Yep, that's going to work. And then if I work that out, I'd get a solution of negative 1 the same way. You didn't have to worry about that. I just wanted to show you. One more problem that we have. So go ahead, pause the video. You try this one again by yourself, see what you get, and then what do you notice about it. So first thing, we need to get it equal to 0. So I'm actually going to move this to the other side. So now I have 0 equals, I'm just going to rewrite it, 6x squared plus 7x plus 3. So now I'm going to try to solve this using the quadratic formula. Again, here's the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There's the, pop goes the weasel. So now let's actually plug some numbers in. So my a value, which I forgot to write down, is 6. My b value is 7. My c value is 3. Now, if you happened to move everything to this side, they're all going to be opposite. They'll all be negative, but you'll end up with the same answer. So if you moved everything over to that side, that's okay. You should still end up with the same solution. So let's start plugging it in. So negative b, so I'll put negative 7 plus or minus the square root, b squared. So 7 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, so one big problem. So get good at kind of rewriting that. So I get negative 7. On the bottom I get 12 plus or minus 7 squared is 49 minus, if I have 4 times 6 times 3, I get 72. So 49 minus 72 is negative 23. So right now I have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 23 over 12. All right, so let's think about this. If I asked you to do the square root of negative 23, there are no real solutions to that. Okay, so if this doesn't work, that means there's no solutions. Okay, so there's no real solutions to this equation. So there's nothing I could plug in here that would make this true in either of those equations. So if you think about graphing, that would need to be one that doesn't have any x-intercepts. If I was thinking about what the graph of a parabola might look like, just to connect it to earlier in the chapter. All right, so you just kind of went through a couple different problems. We went through some that had two integer solutions, so like two nice solutions. We had some that had two decimal solutions, so kind of not nice ones. We went through one that had just one solution, so it was like a double root. And then we also went through one that had no solution. So I want you to kind of think about it. Could you tell without me actually, by looking at these ones, how do you know if it's going to have two solutions, one solution, or no solution? Did you notice anything that might make it look like that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So we'll kind of get to that tomorrow. But if you notice anything, that's awesome. So we'll kind of check in on that tomorrow. Rest of the class time, you're going to have to actually try some problems and practice using the quadratic formula.